The word radiate conjures up different images in each and every one of our minds. Pat and I each have different interpretations of the word that we will share with you, mine being more metaphorical and his being more literal. We hope you will enjoy the contrast between these two interpretations. My mother refers to a pile of notebooks stacked in the corner of our basement as Amelia's 1,000 chapter ones. Before I could write, I dictated stories to her, and she would write them down in these notebooks. Once I could write, I continued to fill these notebooks, each holding unfinished stories. Though I could create new characters and plots, I could never commit to a tale. Likewise, I left my hometown, Cape Elizabeth, after my sophomore year to start a new story, 300 miles inland at Northfield Mount Hermon School. Once there, though, I often reminisced about the characters of Cape Elizabeth. I missed my neighbor Henry particularly, a 9-year-old with a penchant for storytelling and spaghetti. Henry has taught me unique lessons in human interaction. The irony being that I was supposed to be teaching him. As his babysitter for several years, I was charged with showing him discipline, helping him with homework, teaching him the rules of Foursquare. In addition to these duties, Henry requested that I tell him stories. "Excuse me," he would say while I cooked him spaghetti, "tell me a story." I often ran out of plot lines, finding myself repeating the same story about Henry and me bicycling to the Bahamas. We ran into trouble in the Bermuda Triangle, where we faced a storm of raining tacos. But no thunder, Henry reminds me every time I begin the tale, too loud. 1,000 chapter ones. Of course there were stories I had rightfully tossed into a pile in the basement, many things justifiably left unfinished, but perhaps there were notebooks worth taking a peek into. After many ink stains and ripped out pages in my new book, I decided to go back to the basement, to pick up where I had left off with the characters of Cape Elizabeth. Now, Henry and I are back telling stories. In fact, the other day, he marched into my house uninvited and chanting, "Hey guys, I'm home," as he often does. He plopped down on the couch next to me, placed a pile of stapled papers into my lap. The cover of this makeshift book, entitled All About My Dog Sedona, pictured Henry's portrait of his Labradoodle. "Where did you make this?" I asked. He raised 4 fingers. "4th grade, for you, read it." I read Henry's story cover to cover, thankful I had returned to my story in Cape Elizabeth and ready to finish it. Thank you.
Take Amelia's story with a grain of salt. For the next few minutes, I am to add some objectivity and balance to the theme, Radiate. The truth is, radiating has a dark side. Look no further than Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island in Fukushima. Humanity has been devastated over and over by the evil twin of spiritual radiation. Nuclear contamination isn't a very pressing or relatable issue for most Cape Elizabeth residents. So instead, I'll focus on radiation closer to home with a phenomenon that brings to mind leathery old people from the Jersey Shore. That is, tanning beds. Statistically, about 30% of the white girls in the audience use tanning beds. You know who you are. For those who do, I have shocking news. It's unhealthy to roast your flesh with UV rays, as indoor tanning causes accelerated skin aging, skin cancer, eye cancer, and cataracts, just to name a few. In their naive desire to look young and healthy, many tanners become aged and sickly. A tan is really the skin's reaction to damage, so artificial tanning is practically the equivalent of breaking your leg to look edgy, or smoking cigs to look tough. It's a harmful injury, and no one is all that impressed by your willful self-destruction. Plus, the orangey hue caused by tanning beds is undesirable, to say the least. Unless, of course, you're running for president of the United States. Please don't sue me. If tanning beds didn't exist, wintertime paleness wouldn't be a source of insecurity. The issue only arises when one person shows up to school with peeling golden skin in mid-January. Then everyone else feels obligated to fry their own skin, all following the golden leader like lemmings jumping off a cliff into a pit of bronzer and misery. Maybe that's hyperbole, but melanoma isn't something to take lightly. I'd now like to address the tanning demographic directly. It's not your fault that we live at a high latitude. All it takes is a little confidence to embrace your seasonal pastiness. Keep in mind, skin whitening is the latest trend in China. Everything aesthetic is subjective, but skin cancer is not. To dedicate this day to radiation without acknowledging its dark side would give an incomplete picture, like posthumously praising Fidel Castro for his healthcare policies without mentioning his human rights violations. So I'll be the voice of the dissenting minority, urging you not to radiate. Consider what Amelia and the other speakers have to say, but remember, radiation kills. Thank you.